Another update here on a story that we had been covering on this show. Now, we had been covering the union vote, the Amazon union vote in Bessemer, Alabama. Now, the workers getting the union did not pass. The union was shot down via vote. But there was a lot of shady stuff that happened that we covered on this show. First of all, they would try to stop the employees from getting information out that was in favor of the union a variety of different ways. One of them was they took the traffic lights out when people were going to the fulfillment center. So what would happen is there was these traffic lights at this fulfillment center in Bessemer, Alabama, and at the traffic lights, the pro-union employees were going to hand out literature while people were stopped there. So Amazon took out those traffic lights so people weren't stopping on their way to work. They also had restrictions on where people could kind of post information, although they could post their side of the story everywhere. In meetings, if you asked a pro-union question, they would take your information. If you did not ask a pro-union question, they would not take your information. This is basic intimidation 101. One of the biggest things they did, and by the way, all the labor boards were against this. When they asked other entities, should we be able to do this? All the entities said, no, you can't. But Amazon did it anyway. What did they do? They put a big collection box right in the middle of the fulfillment center, surrounded by cameras. So a lot of employees didn't feel comfortable if they wanted to vote yes to drop their ballot there. Well, guess what? There's more to it, folks. And this is Bloomberg who's letting us know this, by the way. Amazon access to mailbox could be grounds to overturn the union vote. Guess what? Not only did they put that mailbox there, folks, when they were told they shouldn't, Amazon themselves had access to it. Testimony that Amazon Inc. had access to a mailbox installed for workers to vote in a recent union election could prompt the National Labor Relations Board, who, by the way, told them they shouldn't have that mailbox in general anyway. But this could prompt the National Labor Relations Board to overturn the results. During an NLRB hearing on Friday, employee Kevin Jackson said Amazon security guard used keys to open the mailbox, which was located near the entrance of the facility in Bessemer, Alabama. Wow. So the plot thickens. It just gets shadier and shadier in regards to how this election was conducted.
Yeah, like when Amazon has access to this, yeah, that's not legitimate anymore. Like they might not have done anything, I suppose, but it's like there's no trust there anymore. You have to have something where it's not accessible either, and it's fair and it's clearly and transparent. But they don't. Yeah, I don't see how they can uphold the results in this current manner. Like,
yeah, I mean. And, we don't have any conclusive evidence that they did anything directly. I mean, all these things that we're mentioning, these are certainly putting your thumb on the scale big time in a very corrupt manner. But as far as did they actually mess with results, we don't have any conclusive evidence of that. But randomly, a big dump of votes that were like 95% no all randomly occurred on two specific days. All these big dumps that were 95% no votes, they all occurred on these 2 days. And as we're finding out now, Amazon had access to this mailbox. So yeah, we don't have anything direct. We can't say 100% certainty, yes, they did this. But I mean, there's enough red flags that we could map out a frickin' marathon around the entire city of Bessemer. There's enough red flags for that. So yeah, they got to overturn this thing and redo it. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like some of those practices, though, like they're legal, aren't they? Like,
sure.
Intimidation, it's like we should have more rules, I would say, in this regard, where we say, look, there's certain things that you like. If you want to spread the whole, you shouldn't unionize, and here's why you shouldn't. Okay, fine, but there's certain things that you can't do. You can't do the intimidation tactics. Like that should be
right.
We should find a way to regulate that, I think.
Well, here's the catch-22, man. You know what would help stifle those practices and bring about better practices? A workers' union. It's
Yeah.
kind of like one of those. It's like one of those. Should felons have the right to vote? By the way, felons don't get to vote on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of one of those. Like, well, a union would really help with this. But in the meantime, we're going to try to make sure you don't get a union, and there's nothing you can do about all the things we can do to try to make sure you don't get one. But too bad you don't have a union that could help you.
It's insane.
It really, and you know what, man? Let me ask you a personal question, and I want to ask you more about just how this has all been for your era. But as somebody who is about to formally enter the workforce, you graduate next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I mean I don't want to jinx anything, buddy. You got to pass, and you know, I mean,
think I will.
I think you will. I mean, you probably have finals coming up, and you're dicking around on a YouTube show with me. But I'm hoping you're right. But how does it feel as when you see stuff like this in the world, and you just kind of look at the world around you? How does that make you feel as someone who's about to formally enter the workforce?
I mean, I have mixed feelings about it, I guess.
You don't feel great?
No, not great is a little too strong. Maybe that, but great, no, that's way too strong. But yeah, I have friends who work who are already in the workforce right now, who are in unions in some cases, who are trying to unionize in other cases, and yeah, it's all over the place in some ways. Yeah, it's. And some of their stories don't really fill me with confidence. Like, I have a friend who, even in a unionized position, was just like treated horribly, couldn't get the hours. Well, she got put in extra hours when she was trying to balance things with community college. And she tried talking to the union reps about it, but they really didn't do anything for her in the end of the day. And, she went back and forth with the union rep and her boss, and like things got out of hand. And then eventually she just got terminated. And she was like, well, what the fuck? And then she started trying to get in touch with the union, and the unions were ignoring her. So it's like, I'm in favor of unions as a concept and in general, but it's like at the same time, like, I also know the reality that it really depends on where you are, that not all unions are effective, and that, some of them just fill the pockets of the union reps in the end of the day. And
Oh, absolutely.
it's this cycle where I'm like, when I'm choosing where I work, or when I'm trying to get a job generally, it's just like, how am I going to balance all of these things? And then on top of that, you hear friends being like, well, we tried a union effort and it didn't go anywhere. It's like, oh, that's that fills me with a lot of hope.
That's cool though, that those efforts are happening. Like that there's people in your generation who are trying, because I think that that's the only way to kind of rebuild the unions. I mean, what you're pointing out as far as the state of a lot of unions, that is true. And that's through a decades and decades long effort of defanging unions that goes back to before either one of us were even born.
Right.
And that's what, and so they put people in charge of it that they know are going to kind of serve the CEOs instead of the workers. I mean, that kind of stuff does happen. Does it happen all the time and everywhere? No. But does it happen? Yes. And that's through a very concentrated, years and years long effort to defang unions. And the only way you're going to reverse that is when you just rebuild it from the ground up.
Right. And it's prompted some of them to at least start looking at the history of how we got to where we are. So it's, in that sense, I guess there is hope. But then, you start looking at things like the future of automation, that that freaks me out a little bit too. And I'm like, well, how is that going to affect the work for the rights of workers?
Well, I mean, all of the above is part of the conversation. I mean, it's like automation is part of the conversation. Like workers' rights is part of the conversation. I mean, it's all. And of course, like the digital landscape that we're all a part of is part of the conversation too. I mean, when you bring technology into it, as much as automation is part of the conversation, well, so is the digital landscape that's really reinventing the different ways that people work and what it means to, quote, be at work. I mean, we've seen that especially with this pandemic. So yeah, it's a lot, dude.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Just make sure you list some good references, Joe, and you should be fine. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news on with Ron.